Hi everyone, welcome. Down here in my VermiBag Mini, I've got some red wigglers that have been in this system now for 213 days. We came in here 13 days ago to commemorate the system's 200th day in service. And at that point it did seem to us like we had come back in here perhaps a little sooner than was necessary. It had only been 10 days between feedings, now it's been 13. It looks to me like a little something has decided to grow here. I mean, I would have to guess that based on the shape of the leaves. No, I don't even know. I'm not sure how to classify things based on the shapes of their seedling leaves, but somehow those leaves made me think that perhaps it was a pumpkin seed. I've got a number of pumpkin-related objects in here. Some of them are gourds, which I believe are pumpkins ultimately, just little small ones. And I've also got pumpkin stems. Some of the stems are quite large. And they've probably been in the process of breakdown for something in the neighborhood of a year. I think this is even a pretty puny little pumpkin stem. Pretty tough object. I bought with me today this little tray over here. So I thought that it might be nice to try to get some of these large food objects as we encounter them out of our way. But you know what? Before we do that, and before I get my hands really soiled, another thing I wanted to do was to take some of what I'm feeding them today, these slices of bread. The other thing that they're getting is a whole bunch of potato peel. These slices of bread, I wanted to give these a chance to soak in a little bit of water. So I thought that perhaps I would spray them down in advance of them being placed into the worm bins, just so they can get nice and damp. In my experience, it has always seemed like bread, if you don't dampen it considerably before placing it into the worm bin, it just kind of gets moldy and hardens up, and it just seems to go nowhere. So yeah, back to what I thought we would do with some of these objects that we encounter along the way. I thought it'd be kind of nice just to pull them out and get them out of our way, because in the past few check-ins we've been sort of spotting a little bit of dryness down here, mainly around the edges, where the bag is providing its main functionality of breathability, but as a result it's drying the materials that are out there. And I'd like to try to get a lot of these large food items temporarily out of my way so I could do a good thorough stirring of the material in here. This is, I believe, the stem of a banana. So yeah, we'll just pile whatever we encounter into this little plastic tub to get it out of our way. But before we simply move them out of our way, we'll check them out really quick, because one thing we've been doing is the gourds. Like, here's one of the gourds, and it already had a hole in the side of it. Here's the hole in the side of it. This thing was pretty much hollow 13 days ago because we shook its contents loose, just like we did there. So we could see how the worms are making progress on it, and it was the material that we had jammed into the gourds that was of interest to us, because we had stuffed these gourds. I think 3 of them got stuffed with cauliflower leaves and strawberry. And I suppose it's not too surprising that 13 days later we're not really seeing any leftovers of the strawberry or the cauliflower. Now here's another pumpkin stem, considerably larger than the other one we bumped into before. And that thing's definitely got a long way to go still, if you ask me. But that too has probably been in progress for about a year now. I've really been tempted to start taking some of these large objects and helping them along a little bit by breaking them up. So I'm still a little bit undecided as to how to play it. Yeah, you know, it's not too surprising that these gourds are really not loaded with worms and leftovers of strawberry and cauliflower, because those are the sort of yummy things that the worms are just going to eat up 1, 2, 3. So I suppose I should have kind of expected to find few, if any, leftovers. But it does seem like the worms are still kind of hanging out inside the gourds. Oh, there we go. See all those wormies right there? These are the little guys that were inside this thing. But I don't see any signs of the yummy foods that they were tasked with breaking down for us. So I guess, as Anne would say, good worms. So just for those of you that don't know, Anne is the host over on her worm channel. So Anne, you know who you are, so shout out to you. And I figured we would just probe around a little bit further down here. This is one of the gourd chunks from which we were simply unable to extract the contents because it's sort of a long, narrow piece. Sort of has the dimensions of my thumb. And the worms definitely make their way down into that thing, and oh, look at that. That's something I've been unable to do up until now, which is to shake loose its contents. So that was a little bit surprising when that happened. And at this point, you know, we're also bumping into little chunks of, I believe that this is like fragments of gourd that has already been chipped off of the main object. Here and there, as my hands encounter a slightly larger piece of material, I'm pulling it out. Some of the stuff that we're finding are also, I believe, chunks of smaller pumpkin stems that I decided to start fragmenting into smaller pieces. It's just this really large one that I've been reluctant to break up just because it is so big and it is kind of impressive. I thought it would be interesting just to stand back and watch as the worms gradually break it down without my help. But who knows? My position on that could very well change at some point in the near future. I really wanted to get all those objects out of the way because what I'm doing now is what I really had hoped to do, was bring in some of the materials from around the edge where we had been sort of noticing a little bit of excess dryness in the material. And I thought that if we were to stack it up over here in the middle, then it would be easy enough just to come in with my spray wand one more time and give the stuff a little bit of a soaking. Over the past few check-ins, we have been spraying the material down, but we simply, you know, went around the outer edge in an attempt to moisten the material. But I figured perhaps if we stack it up in the middle and then we can just have more direct access to it, we can dampen it, and then slowly, as it gets thoroughly dampened, perhaps return it to the outer edge, or maybe even just stir it in with the surrounding materials. I just keep finding other little chunks of what I think are pumpkin stem and stuff, but as you can see, we've removed a good amount of residual stuff from the system, so I think it's time to come in with my little wand here to start dampening this material. And as we do, maybe it would also make good sense, as long as these edges around the perimeter are excavated, to dampen what's down in there in case we missed a certain amount of stuff around the edges that could benefit from some added moisture. I did attempt to protect this system from drying by wrapping it with plastic around the outer perimeter, but it's not a perfect cover, so it is a little bit breathable still and allows for some moisture loss, I believe, through the walls of the bag. So I think that's kind of what I was after right there, is to get all this stuff out to the point where it's really easy to spray it down thoroughly and then gradually start working it back out. And then we can slowly excavate a little pit down the middle into which we could drop today's feeding. And I bet you these worms are loving this little shower that we're giving them. I mean, the material down the center seems like it was in good shape from a moisture perspective. Here and there I'm still encountering chunks of gourd. because here and there the gourds have been breaking apart, either me deliberately trying to break them or here and there me just accidentally cracking off chunks of them. What else do we have down here? I thought I spotted some other larger objects. So I think this was time well spent in terms of applying some additional moisture down into this system. So why don't we proceed with giving them their food. I mean, I thought about doing the same thing that we've been doing, which is stuffing these gourds with the fresh foods that we've got for them, but I don't know. It doesn't seem like it pays off, because when we come back in here later to see what's happening, we never really encounter what I'm expecting to find, which is a huge worm party down within the gourds. So I figured whatever, we'll just drop everything in wholesale as is. I suppose we could sort of aim some of these gourds to have their openings facing upwards, so that as we drop in the portion for today's feeding, maybe a few chunks of food could actually backfill the void. Oops. But sometimes I wonder if I just get a little bit too into the details of how I'm doing things here, because I don't think it makes a whole heck of a lot of difference. Oops, there I go. Chipping away further at the gourds. So the portion today is pretty large. The stuff was all jammed into the bottom of a plastic bag and frozen, and it was in a pretty good size heap, which made me think that it wasn't all that much, but as I started chipping it away and breaking it apart from each other, it did start to reveal its overall quantity, and it did seem like there's a good amount of stuff in here. So I've got my pulverized eggshell, which is what I use as grit, and I've also got my supply of leaves, and it's not a whole lot. It's what remains at the little tiny bit at the bottom of this box, which I thought we might apply as sort of a top dressing, which is what I like to do sometimes when I apply bedding that way. And yeah, you know, I'll admit I've been somewhat stingy on bedding in the past few check-ins. Perhaps next time we'll come here prepared with a little bit more bedding than what we've been giving them lately. So let's just drop in whatever remains in this box, and before we finish, perhaps we can also return some of this material that's adhering to my gloves back down into the bin. At the same time, we could also dampen these dry leaves. Because then, you know, we won't be placing a bunch of material in here that's going to counteract all that lovely moisture that we just added. Once again, I think this is going to be really appreciated by the wormies, all this nice dampness going in. And I suppose the nice thing is that if it does get to the point where I've simply put too much in, the stuff can simply evaporate out through the sides of the bag again. Or maybe even, in a worst case scenario, just make its way all the way through, down to the bottom, and possibly just drip out through the fabric on the bottom. But I think that's pretty much it for our check-in here. I'm just looking around. Maybe one other thing we could do really quick is just to use the spray bottle to return some of these materials that stuck to the plastic container. Get all that stuff back down into the worm bin rather than flushing it down my drain at the sink. So yeah, that's it for today's feeding, I think. So I got a few more things I gotta take care of getting put away and cleaned up, but I'm not going to keep you around for that because that's boring. Let's just put this plastic cover back on and we'll call it a day. But before I go, really quick, let me just say thank you. Thank you so much for watching. Hopefully you enjoyed the video. If you did, as always, please don't forget to leave me a quick thumbs up before you go. That's always really appreciated. And if you haven't done so already, please also consider subscribing. That's very much appreciated as well. All right, everyone. Have a great day. Thanks for watching. Bye now.